So, thanks for joining me tonight on the Aggie Up podcast. So, I was thinking earlier about signing day and everything, and I thought, man, there just wasn't much coverage about the Aggies. There was no, recruiting experts talking about the Utah State signing class. There wasn't, nobody called me asking me for an interview to talk about the signing class, and we'll get together, a couple of us, and do another podcast coming up, just kind of wrapping up the class, maybe preview spring practice and that kind of thing. But like I said, I think Aggie fans want a little bit more analysis to the signing day events rather than just the list of signees and so forth. And so that's why we're here. That's why I started doing this podcast, whether one person or 100 or a million people listen to it. I think it's a great thing for Aggie fans to have somewhere that they can get a little bit more information and some coverage, some Aggie talk, and some deeper analysis. So here we go. So I'm going to start out with the last piece of the signing class. Is a guy that's going on a mission. This morning was undecided, or at least nobody knew where he was going really. Even some of his family didn't know. And I was at Alta High School to see MaTahoney sign with Utah State. He put on the Utah State hat, and his mom kind of lost it. She kind of freaked out. And if I thought she was going to listen to this podcast, I probably wouldn't tell this story, but she was really set on him going to Boise State. She thought he was going to Boise State. She thought he was going to sign with Boise State, and obviously that didn't happen. That said, MaTahoney is a perfect outside linebacking fit. He's a perfect fit for that outside linebacker position that's gonna rush the passer, gonna blitz a lot, and he's a perfect fit for that because that's the one thing that he does really, really well is get to the quarterback. He's a guy that, you turn on an Alta High School game, whether it's even his junior year or senior year, and you're going to say, man, that guy is tough to block. That guy, when he wants to get to the quarterback, he's getting there. And he's really got that skill to get to the quarterback. I've talked to a lot of people that have watched a lot of Alta High School games. I've watched a lot of Alta High School games. You can watch almost all their games online, even now, if you wanted to go back and watch Alta High School. And you're definitely going to see that he's a tough, physical outside linebacker. And I had, even before this, signing day or really during the high school football season, there's maybe 10 guys that are kind of defensive linemen, outside linebacker type of guys, even inside linebacker type guys that could get bigger, maybe go on a mission. Taylor Cateau was playing quarterback. Tyler Batty was playing at Payson for a really bad team that was playing him all over the place in weird ways, like playing him at wide receiver and stuff. And so obviously some of those guys had different situations and different things. But I was hoping Utah State could land at least one of those guys. And then Carson Terrell is a guy that the Utah State landed as a tight end. He'll play tight end, but as far as physically, he can match up with any of those guys. Longi Tuifua, MaTahoney, Lorenzo Faute is a little bit bigger than most of those guys. Will probably play defensive tackle. Jay Tufele is a 5-star recruit, so we'll just put him in his own category. But those guys, and that's how Utah High School football is every year, and is going to continue to be every year. There's going to be 10 of those defensive linemen. There's going to be 10 of those kind of jumbo athlete type of guys that I like to call them. There's going to be there's going to be guys like that. Obviously, Levani DeMooney signed with Stanford. He was a Utah State commit at one time. Would have been great to land a guy like that. Ben Bywater is another guy that's a really versatile linebacker that signed with BYU. And by the way, speaking of not being on the radio or anything, I go to high school football games almost every Friday night. I'm watching guys. I'm watching huddle tape. I mean, I know these guys forwards and backwards. The in-state schools did really well, and I'll even include Weber State, SUU, even Dixie State for that matter in this. That probably all of those classes were some of the better classes that I remember seeing ever. And so Utah State, the state of Utah, I guess, should be really proud of both in-state programs, the in-state kids, and how this signing class went together. That said, the 2018 class is going to be even better, and it's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a couple quarterbacks, a couple guys, a couple athletes, and a lot of offensive linemen again in the class. Maybe there's a chance that there could be even more defensive linemen than this year. And like I said, there was 10 really, really high level kind of outside linebacker, pass rusher, edge guys, defensive linemen. So, that's high praise, obviously, but all of the in-state schools had really good signing classes. And there's a lot of good players in the state of Utah. A lot of good players. Started with MaTahoney. He's an outside linebacker, 6'3", 230. It really came down. I mean, the all three schools, as far as BYU, Boise State, and Utah State, were recruiting hard at the end. He had a hard time deciding. Obviously, one of the major things that was hard for him was his mom. Was really wanted him to go to Boise State and et cetera. So the next one I'll stick with Alta High School and Chandler Dolphin. He's a guard, an offensive guard he's gonna come in and compete, whether it's this year or next year. He's a nasty, tough, smart offensive lineman that I think Utah State needs to build a pipeline and build an offensive line with those guys every year. Matt Wells mentioned the 4 signees and 16 total scholarships normally they have for the offensive linemen. And I think if Utah State signed 4 solid offensive linemen every single year, every single signing class, I think that's a great recipe for success. Obviously, with red shirts and different things like that may end up being more or less than 16 some years. But that's really how you build up that room. You really build up a solid depth, and hopefully the depth will continue to improve. So, Chandler Dolphin's a guy that I really like. I loved watching him in high school. He was fun to watch. You turn on his tape, or some people maybe watched him play and weren't that impressed. But the guy improved every single game. This summer, I thought he was kind of a borderline guy who I was like, well, I wasn't quite sure. And in this season, he really improved. He really got stronger. He really got better. In every game, he's getting better and better. And next year at Utah State, in a college weight training program and in a Division I program, he's going to improve. He's going to push those other guys, I think, and he's really going to pick up the offense fast, and all that kind of stuff will be no problem for him at all. He's a smart kid, so I think he's got a ton of potential to play early in his career. And if the Aggies can keep recruiting well, the offensive line, that position is going to be a strength instead of a weakness in the future. So, Devon Anderson is a defensive lineman, another position of need. the Aggies signed, or according to Matt Wells, I guess today he mentioned there was probably another spot for a defensive end, not a defensive tackle per se, or nose guard, because they've got some of those guys. Mowasike is a guy that's going to play 3 more years at Utah State unless he goes to the NFL or something, but that guy is just as productive as any player that Utah State has had for a long time, and is going to play really well. So back to Devon Anderson. He's a prototypical defensive end for Utah State's 3-4 defense. He's 6'3", 270, and so he's going to be able to hold up some blocks. He's athletic enough to get some pressure and to get out to the edge on those edge rushing plays that really killed Utah State. I really like the defensive ends that Utah State has. They need another one. I 100% believe that because you've got to be able to get to the edge and hold the edge both equally. I think Wally Adioye is a guy that can do that as well, potentially. Hopefully he's back to 100% from the car crash and different things he's had to deal with. And the defensive end position will be an interesting one to watch this spring and this fall to see who kind of steps up. There may be a couple guys that from outside linebacker that'll drop down, and maybe a Mason Toback, a Logan Lee type of guy, maybe Larson. So it'll be a toss up to see what happens with that. Traditionally, those defensive ends are bigger, 270-pound guys, and I'm not sure if they'll have those guys. If they'll have enough depth as far as that size. But the schedule is a little bit different this year as far as, not quite as many running teams. And so potentially, if you can get a pass rusher in there, maybe mix in the 4-3 and 3-4 and mix up some things on the defensive line and front seven, that could potentially work. And play the best 7 guys no matter what positions they're at. So another JUCO guy, Deontay Fortenberry, Tay, as Matt Wells said he goes by. So Fortenberry is a very, very confident cornerback, and he's another guy I think that shows this class, or I guess is a good example of how the coaches really focused on certain guys they wanted, certain positions they needed. And Fortenberry was really the only cornerback that the Utah State brought in on a visit. And so they must have been really confident they were going to be able to get him. They're confident that he can come in and play right away. I think Bailey will take a step forward and improve this year. But he didn't play well enough last year to be able to say, yeah, that guy, Wesley Bailey will be able to start. So he's going to have a chance to come in and start opposite Jalen Davis, along with Cameron Haney and Bailey. So those guys will battle it out for playing time. But you need 3, 4, 5 good cornerbacks. That's just the way it is. The other corners that they signed, Deontay Fortenberry is obviously a JUCO guy. They signed 2 other cornerbacks. Zahodri Jackson is absolutely a cornerback. Good speed, 5'10", 165 maybe at most. He's a cornerback, and then the other guy that they signed, Jared Green, is kind of a hybrid safety, defensive backs, cornerback kind of guy that could go either way. I like Jared Green. He's a guy that can be a little bit more physical, has a little bit better size, and could probably put on a little bit more weight than some of these other guys. And so if he doesn't work out at cornerback, he can play safety. And so really to get those 3 guys is is a really good depth